I believe we're ready to get started this evening. You can join us for our evening worship here in Korea. Hoping that everything will go well with the AV, the other way to run it today, so I'm trying to have to run it from up here on my phone, but hopefully that will go well. But our first song this evening will be I Have Found a Friend in Jesus. And if you would, please stand as we sing. I have found a friend in Jesus, he's everything to me. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. The lily of the valley, in him alone I see. All I need to cleanse and make me fully whole. In sorrow he's my comfort, in trouble he's my stay. He tells me every care on him to roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. Oh, he all my griefs has taken, and all my sorrows borne. In temptation he's my strong and mighty tower. I have all for him forsaken, and all my idols torn from my heart, and now he keeps me by his power. Though all the world forsake me, and Satan tempt me sore, through Jesus I shall safely reach the goal. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. He will never, never leave me, nor yet forsake me here, while I live by faith and do his blessed will. A wall of fire about me, I've nothing now to fear. With his manna he my hungry soul shall fill. Then sweep me up to glory, to see his blessed face, where rivers of delight shall ever roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. Be seated, please. The next song will be O Thou Fount of Every Blessing. And after we sing this song, we'll be led in our opening prayer by Brother Robert Glover. O thou fount of every blessing, turn my heart to sing thy grace. Strength of mercy never ceasing, calls for songs of loudest praise. Teach me ever to I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. Never let me wander from thee. Never leave the God I love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for thy courts above.
There was going, there was God with him among thank you for everything you do with us. Thank you for our wonderful songs when you give us. Thank you for Kevin, for grace of the Lord, goes to you. Thank you for everything you blessing us in our Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Next song will be The Lord Has Been Mindful of Me. Though I through the valley of shadow, or mountain, or troubled sea, and oft in the darkness have traveled, the Lord has been mindful of me. The Lord has been mindful of me. He blesses and blesses again. My God is a God of the living. How excellent is his name. Much more than my grief and my sorrow. Much more than adversity. Much more than me all I am given. The Lord has been mindful of me. The Lord has been mindful of me. He blesses and blesses again. My God is a God of the living. How excellent is his name. I'm rich, I am saved, I am happy. I'm health and prosperity. I've friends, I have doors ever open. The Lord has been mindful of me. The Lord has been mindful of me. He blesses and blesses again. My God is a God of the living. How excellent is his name. Before Kevin brings our lesson, we'll sing There Stands a Rock. And during the singing of this song, there are classes prepared, I know, for our school-age children, and down they'll be dismissed during the singing of the song. If you would please stand. There stands a rock on shores of time that leads to heaven. It's sublime, that rock is cleft, and they are blessed who find within this cleft a rest. Some build their homes on the ever-drifting sand, some on their fame or the treasure or their land. Mine's on the rock that forever shall stand, Jesus the rock of ages. That rock's across its arms outspread, celestial glory bathes its head. To its firm base my all I bring, and to the cross of ages cling. Some build their homes on the ever-drifting sand, some on their fame or their treasure or their land. Mine's on the rock that forever shall stand, Jesus the rock of ages. That rock's a tower whose lofty height, illumined with heaven's unclouded light. Oh, on their fame or their treasure or their land. Mine's on the rock that forever shall stand. Jesus, the rock of ages. Be seated, please.
Thank you, Brady. Evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Had a beautiful day. Hope that you've been able to enjoy it. I just got communication just a little bit ago from Nathan. He and the kids have made it safely to Mid-South Youth Camp. So we're excited that the Lord answered our prayers and given them safe travel. We hope they have a safe week and just have a great time there at camp. I'm not sure how old Mid-South Youth Camp is. I didn't know that Jonathan used to go there. Anybody else go to Mid-South? Well, you should have. No. But I think Carol Teal has been there before as a camper. It's been there for many generations, and so we're excited that our kids get to go. You know, this group of kids, through COVID and everything, it really impacted their ability to have activities and get together. So we are so blessed that Nathan is here, and they've gotten so much that they've already done and accomplished in a short amount of time, and we're just grateful that they are just having a ball in the Lord. And Christians can have fun, have a good time, and learn a lot and be a blessing. And we certainly have some of the best kids here at Berea, and we're grateful for them. And we rejoice with Emily, and we're excited about your shower tonight, and rejoice with the baby. And I hope everybody can stick around and celebrate with them tonight. Miss Mildred, you are an amazing woman. I thought I need to go back to Brady and get my eyes re-examined when you walked in tonight. And I said, surely that's not Miss Mildred coming in here. But God has been good. And I'm so grateful that you're feeling so much better. I know you were a sick woman for a little bit. But God answered our prayers, and we're so grateful. So glad you're here tonight. That's an answer to prayer too. We are in the book of Esther. We're going to be looking briefly at some of the life lessons from Esther chapter 7 and 8. When we finished a couple weeks ago with this particular study, we had Esther entertaining Haman and the king at a banquet. And recall that the king said, Esther, just tell me what you want. You can have up to half of my kingdom. And Esther says, well, that's nice. I want you to come to another banquet. And the king said, all right, we'll be there. And so Haman and the king are preparing to go to another banquet prepared and hosted by Esther. But we do know that in the meantime, in spite of the great honor that has been given to him, he was not a happy man. He was full of bitterness and anger and hatred directed at who? Mordecai, Esther's cousin, who was more like an adoptive father to her, because he didn't do what whenever he walked by? When Haman walked by Mordecai, what did not happen? He didn't bow before him. He didn't have a regard for him. So that infuriated him, so much so that unconscionably, Haman decided he was going to do what? Wipe out all of his people. All of them that are Jews, he's going to wipe them all out. So he goes to the king and he says, I'm willing to donate a certain amount of money to the king's treasury if you'll let me wipe out these people. And what did the king say? Yeah, you don't even have to give the money, just do it. So a decree was issued and there was a death sentence placed on the Jews, including Esther, the queen. Unbeknownst to the king, she was a Jew as well. So there's great weeping and wailing. Mordecai puts on sackcloth and ashes, and he goes out and he's greatly grieving and mourning. And they get word to Esther. Mordecai's out there weeping and wailing, and he's in sackcloth and ashes. And so he sends word to Esther that basically, as far as Esther's concerned, she's their only hope. If Esther doesn't intervene on their behalf, we're all dead. And don't you think for 1 minute you're going to escape either. you're going to go down too. And so we're prepared for banquet number 2 tonight. I don't know if you ever had some major occasion coming up and it was very stressful and you just felt angst about it. You ever had that happen? What are some instances you can think of when you were just so nervous? Well, you've had a good life. First kid? That'll do it. Third kid? That'll do. Here 4. Anybody have 4 here? 4 going once, huh? Yeah, absolutely. Robert? When you were baptized, you were nervous before you got baptized? Everybody, I think, maybe have a little nervousness when they're that. I remember baptizing a lady one time. She was a fairly large woman. And at the time, I wasn't as big as I am now. She probably made 2 of me. And she was scared of water. And I had to karate chop her hands to get her down. I just... But she was really scared to death. I mean, visibly shaking. Teeth chattering, scared to death. At going underwater, she feared water greatly. Understandable. If you're scared of water and you don't ever want to go under, then to be baptized would be a stressful situation, wouldn't it? Anybody else? Having to deal with court. Yes, absolutely. A new job? Or maybe you get called into the boss's office for a special meeting. And you've heard other people had such special meetings and they were no longer there. That's a nerve-wracker.
First time I asked my wife for a date.
Well, Brother Joe, it must have gone well. But yeah, get your hands all sweaty and you're stammering and you don't know exactly how to say what you want to say and you just kind of blurt something out. Yeah, we've been there. And there's all sorts of things in life. But you can imagine the anxiety and angst of Esther about to approach the king in front of Haman about what's going on in their lives. She's going to reveal who she is. She's going to put her ancestry on the line and reveal to the king that, unbeknownst to him, his decree has put her life in jeopardy. And we talked about the fact that back in that period of time, just to appear before the king without being summoned or without permission was putting your life on the line. What if he didn't extend his scepter to her? It was death. We can't really imagine that, can we? She was just a little nervous just to talk to him without an appointment. And so, what does it tell you about his reaction to her? When not only he saw her, he's like, oh, it's Esther, here, come on in. And then when Esther says, I have something I need, he goes, up to half my kingdom for you. Why do you suppose? Do you think it goes deeper than just her beauty? Obviously, she was beautiful. We talked about all the stringent things she had to go to even be in the possibility of being the queen. But do you think her character, her grace, her persona, all of that went into play, that she was a charming person, a kind person? She had attributes about her that not only because of her physical beauty, but because of her inner beauty, carried a lot of weight to King Xerxes. I think so. So we pick up our reading tonight in Esther. Can you bump it? Can we all bump it? Okay. And if you get any messages, I'll answer them for you. So the king and Haman went to dine with Queen Esther. And as they were drinking wine on that second day, the king again asked, Queen Esther, what is your petition? It will be given you. What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted. Then Queen Esther answered, if I have found favor with you, O king, and if it pleases your majesty, grant me my life. This is my petition. And spare my people this is my request. Now I just want to stop there for a minute, because what is the first thing she says is her request? Spare my life. Now when the king hears these words, spare my life, do you think these are going to be shocking words? Yes, because why? He's not after her. And nobody else better be after her either. Right? So spare my life. Grant me my life and my people. This is my request. For I and my people have been sold for destruction and slaughter and annihilation. If we had been merely sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept quiet. But no such distress would justify disturbing the king. So she says, if we were just people that we had just basically lost our rights and we were just sold in slavery, what? What did she say? I wouldn't say a word. Wouldn't say a word. But it's far more deeper than that. King Xerxes asked Queen Esther, who is he? Where is the man who has dared to do such a thing? I'm not after you. I'm not trying to destroy you or your people. Who is? The adversary and the enemy is this vile Haman. Then Haman was terrified before the king and queen. The king got up in a rage, left his wine, and went out into the palace garden. But Haman, realizing that the king had already decided his fate, stayed behind to beg Queen Esther for his life. So we have a surprised king. He is shocked. Who else is shocked? Haman. What does he not realize? That she was a Jew also. And unbeknownst to him, his bitterness and anger and animosity toward Mordecai is now directed toward the queen. Is he going to win that battle? He's horrified. Oh my goodness, what have I done? So the king gets up in a rage. And I just want to pause here and tell you that there are some people that are difficult to be around in a rage, difficult when they're really angry, very terrifying sometimes. But there's one person you don't want mad at you who leaves in a rage. The king of this country, who's the most powerful nation on the earth at this time. And it's interesting that nothing has to be said. He sees the king get up and leave in a rage. And what does the Bible say that Haman realizes mentally and intellectually? I'm a dead man. I'm a goner. And his only hope, ironically, is to beg who? Esther. If I could just get Esther to plead my case and to help me, maybe I would stand a chance. Just as the king returned from the palace garden to the banquet hall, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was reclining. The king exclaimed, will he even molest the queen while she is with me in my house? And as soon as the word left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Now, I don't think Haman had any intentions of doing anything to, as the king said, molest the queen. He was begging for his life, but he is ill-timed because he's fallen across the couch where she's reclining. So he's laying right there in front of her. And the king, he goes out in a rage and he kind of calms down. And just as he calms down, he comes back in and there he is laying right there up against the queen. Bad choice number 2. And this is interesting. At that moment in time, attendants in the banquet hall do what? Cover his face. When do most people get their face covered? When they're dead. When you die, what do they do with your face? They cover you. They cover you. What do you do before you're executed? They cover you. And so when they covered his face, it's a done deal. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs attending the king, said, a gallows 75 feet high stands by Haman's house. He had made it for Mordecai, who spoke up to help the king. The king said, hang him on it. So they hanged Haman on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's fury subsided. Now you talk about swift and immediate punishment. As soon as the king understood what was going on, he said, hang him. Now, there's somewhat a semblance of a debate about his death, whether it was hanging as we know it or if he was actually cast down onto a spire and impaled. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. Impaled. Either one, not particularly something I would want to be a part of. So he was executed on the device that he designed for Mordecai. Talk about irony. Okay? Now, that's one part of the problem that's removed. The vile Haman, as Esther describes him, is now no longer a threat, but now we still have another problem. What's the problem? We still have a decree, and the decree was that all the Jews are going to be annihilated. That still stands in spite of the fact that Haman is dead. Chapter 8. That same day, King Xerxes gave Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai came into the presence of the king, for Esther had told him how he was related to her. The king took off his signet ring, which he had reclaimed from Haman, and presented it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed him over Haman's estate. So by giving Mordecai the king's ring that was under the care of Haman, when he gave that to Mordecai, what was he doing? Letting Mordecai replace Haman in his position. Not only so, but he was given Haman's estate, which means probably someone that didn't have a lot of money and didn't have a lot of personal effects, now suddenly probably is very rich. Now he is a very affluent. Okay? So he's appointed him over the estate. Esther again pleaded with the king, falling at his feet and weeping. She begged him to put an end to the evil plan of Haman the Agagite, which he had devised against the Jews. Then the king extended the gold scepter to Esther, and she arose and stood before him. If it pleases the king, she said, and if he regards me with favor and thinks it's the right thing to do, and if it is pleased with me, let an order be written overruling the dispatches that Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, devised and wrote to destroy the Jews in all the king's provinces. For how can I bear to see disaster fall on my people? How can I bear to see the destruction of my family? King Xerxes replied to Queen Esther and to the Mordecai the Jew, because Haman attacked the Jews, I have given his estate to Esther, and they have hanged him on the gallows. Now, write another decree in the king's name in behalf of the Jews as seems best to you, and seal it with the king's signet ring, for no document written by the king's name and sealed with his ring can be revoked. Now, basically what he's saying, that as far as the edict to kill all the Jews is concerned, what about it? I can't revoke it. It can't be undone. Anything that is decreed by the king is going to be valid. I can't invalidate it. But what can he do? Write something else that will negate it. Write something else that will trump it. Write something else that will make it so that whatever he has done can be overpowered. At once the royal secretaries were summoned on the 23rd day of the third month, the month of Sivan. They wrote out on all of Mordecai's orders to the Jews and to the satraps, governors and nobles of the 127 provinces, stretching from India to Cush. These orders were written in the script of each province and the language of all the people, and also to the Jews in their own script and language. Mordecai wrote in the name of King Xerxes, sealed the dispatches with the king's signet ring, and sent them by mounted couriers who rode fast horses, especially bred for the king. Why all this buzz? Why all this fast and furious movement? Because the time is at hand. If they don't act right now, there are going to be Jews who are going to go ahead and be killed. The king's edict granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves, to destroy, kill, and annihilate any armed force of any nationality or province that might attack them and their women and children, and to plunder the property of their enemies. So the edict was that any Jew it's open season for any Jew. That's the edict. They can all be annihilated without any recourse. What is it that Mordecai comes up with and puts the stamp of the king on? What is it that he does that saves their lives? It's not that he says it can't be done. What he says is they have the ability to defend themselves. They have the ability to fight back anybody that wants to do so. And who is going to help them carry that out? The Persians. Mordecai is now basically the prime minister of Persia. He's now been given Haman's job. And so he's going to be protected by and backed up by the forces of Persia. Is the king of Persia going to let his prime minister be killed by somebody or any of his people? No. So now the Persians are going to guarantee their safety. So if anybody wants to get them, go right ahead. But just so you know, they can protect themselves now. So basically what? If somebody wanted to hurt the Jews, if somebody wanted to kill them, they're going to have to do so against the mightiest army and power in the world. So if somebody did decide, that's a pretty good idea, I think I'll do that. All of a sudden now, what are they thinking? Oh, you know what? Changed my mind. I think they're pretty cool. I think they're good. All right? So, the day appointed for the Jews to do this in all the provinces of King Xerxes was the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. A copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as law in every province and made known to the people of every nationality so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers riding the royal horses raced out, spurred on by the king's command, and the edict was also issued in the citadel of Susa. Mordecai left the king's presence wearing royal garments of blue and white, a large crown of gold, and a purple robe of fine linen. And the city of Susa held a joyous celebration. Could you imagine if Haman was still alive? If he could get this mental picture of Mordecai, the guy he despises, wearing the finery of royalty? And all of the Jews began to celebrate, beginning there in Susa, the capital. For the Jews, it was a time of happiness and joy, gladness and honor. In every province and in every city, wherever the edict of the king went, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, with feasting and celebrating. And many people of their nationalities became Jews because fear of the Jews had seized them. So anybody that was thinking about maybe hurting the Jews suddenly decides what? I'll convert. I'll be one out of fear. Oh, the Jews have that kind of protection? I've always wanted to be a Jew. In spite of the fact that God is not mentioned by name, is God at work in the book of Esther? Is God at work in the life of Esther, Mordecai, and in all the Jews in every province? Absolutely. So a couple of things I want to think about in regard to today's lesson. First is the spiritual law of reaping what you've sowed. Sowing and reaping. Numbers chapter 32 and verse 23, Moses says, "But if you fail to keep your word, then you will have sinned against the Lord, and you may be sure that your sin will find you out." Is anybody going to get away with anything? Are there mysteries unbeknownst to human beings of atrocities that nobody knows what happened or how it happened or who did it? I used to read biographies when I was a child in elementary school. They had a series, and some of y'all who teach might have some of them. There was just an elementary series of biographies about major people in history. And I used to get one and read it and turn it in and get another one. And I remember Amelia Earhart was one of those. And her story is just remarkable. You remember Amelia Earhart? And the great mystery about Amelia Earhart is what? We don't know what happened to her. She just kind of vanished. And so, I don't know, I was probably in the 5th grade. I remember finishing that and I prayed. I said, Lord, when I get to heaven, would you tell me what happened to her? It's been several years ago. I had a cousin murdered in Memphis. Somebody broke into his apartment while he was sleeping, and he was stabbed multiple times and robbed. And to this day, nobody knows who did it. The first place I ever preached is down in Hickman County. And I've told you about staying with folks during the day on Sundays and eating with them and spending time with them. Well, one of those couples that I did that with, she had suffered a stroke. And she was bedfast at home. But she was doing good, getting stronger, but she wasn't able to get up and to walk and to go to service. So he finally, after many, many months, decided he could leave her for a few minutes just to go to church. And I don't remember if it was a Sunday night or a Wednesday night. It's probably been 25 years ago. Somebody broke into their home while he was gone and burned the house to the ground. And they never found her. And her daughter is still a good friend of mine. And the anniversary of that atrocity was not too long ago. And she said, if only I could find my mama. If only I could know what happened to my mama. And probably the unknown and not having closure is one of the most difficult things about losing somebody you love. And there's a lot of despair and heartache when there are atrocities and sins and people hurt and killed. And either you don't know who did it or you can't do anything about it. Doesn't that hurt? You know what? God is going to right all the wrongs. There is not any crime that anybody's committed that they're going to get away with. God will bring everybody to justice that is not covered by the blood. I mentioned this morning, there's not a sin you can commit. There's not something you've ever done that you can't get forgiveness of. Aren't you glad? Amen. But if you're not trying to get forgiveness and you think you've got one over on everybody and you think you've got away with something and no one's ever going to know it, God's waiting. God's waiting. So we have this word of the Lord. Be sure your sin will find you out. Even though people do heinous things behind the scenes, such as Haman had done, God was aware of it, God knew it, and God brought it to judgment. And how ironic that Haman died on his own gallows. Keep forgetting. Secondly, Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. The one who sows to pleasure his sinful nature, from the sinful nature will he reap destruction. The one who sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. Some versions say to the household of faith. If I have a word for you tonight, it is this. Don't you ever give up. Don't you ever get so discouraged that you say to yourself, what's the use? And I have known of people, some of which I've been very close to, who ran up on the flag, the white flag of surrender, who have walked away from their faith and walked away from God because they thought, what's the use? It doesn't matter. It doesn't do any good. As Asaph came to a conclusion in Psalms chapter 73, when he looked at the prosperity of the wicked, he said, there's not even any pains in their death. When they die, it looks like everything's great. They're wealthy and everything's going good, and they could care less about God. He said this, surely I have cleansed my heart in vain. Surely I've done all the right things, and it doesn't do any good. In verse 17 of Psalm 73, he says, until I came to the sanctuary of the Lord, and then I understood their end. The end of the wicked. They may seem like they got it all made in the shade, as the old saying goes. It may look like they have been wicked and immoral and fraudulent and hateful and mean, and they've got one over on people and they've taken advantage of people, and it seems like they've got everything going for them, and you're trying to live righteously and godly, and it seems like nothing's working, and you just say, you know what? It doesn't do any good. It doesn't matter. And don't let Satan sell you that bill of goods. It always pays to stay with God. Did it for Mordecai? Did it for Esther? Did it for the Jewish people? Yes. And finally, Romans 8 and verse 28, a verse you've heard many times. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. As Mike was talking about on Wednesday night, we think about people like Joseph. Imagine all the things that Joseph went through. His brothers were jealous of him, sold him into slavery. In fact, if it hadn't been for Reuben, what would have happened to him? They'd have killed him. Can you imagine being in a pit and listening to your brothers argue over whether or not they just need to kill you or not? And then being sold into slavery and still continue to be faithful to God. And he gets down there, and you know the story. You know all the things he went through. Would it have been easy to get discouraged? Would it have been easy to run up the white flag of surrender? Would it have been easy to say, surely I have lived this righteousness in vain? Bad things just keep happening. Maybe that's happened in your life. It's happened in my life. Try to do what's right and just continually get bad news. Continually something bad happens. There was a span of 6 months in my life that I didn't get it to the extent that Job did, but it's kind of like that. Just one thing right after another, after another, after another, and after another. And it was like the tsunami of life had collapsed on top of me. And I felt like I was punch drunk. You ever seen a couple guys boxing and somebody get his brains knocked out? He's just sitting there just walling around like this, and they come in and stop the fight? Sometimes life can do that to you. Sometimes Satan can convince you there's no good reason to keep on living for God. But all things work together for good to them that love the Lord, to them that are called according to His purpose. And sometimes we don't taste of that until we get to the other side. But precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of His saints. And when the angels come to get the righteous, it is all good from there on. And for how long? Forever. Forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever again. And one more forever. Don't you ever let the devil lie to you and get away with it. You be a man or woman of God, and blessings will come. If you need to respond to the invitation, do so as together we stand and sing.
Softly and tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling for you and for me. See on the portals, He's waiting and watching, watching for you and for me. Come home, come home. You are weary, come home. Earnestly, tenderly, we tarry when Jesus is pleading, pleading for you and for me? Why should we linger and heed not his mercies, mercies for you and for me? Come home, come home, ye who are weary, come home. Earnestly, tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling, oh sinner, come home. Oh, for the wonderful love he has promised, promised for you and for me. Glory and sin, he has mercy and pardon, pardon for you and for me. Come home, come home, ye who are weary, come home. Earnestly, tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling, oh sinner, come home. Be seated, please. So glad that you could be a part of our worship service this evening. Before we dismiss, is there any announcements that we need to be aware of? Well, we have Emily's shower immediately after the service, so hope you can stick around for that. During the singing of our last song, you were not able to be here this morning to participate in the Lord's Supper. That has been prepared for you. If you'd like to do that, as we sing this last song, just exit out the back. Making sure and pick up a communion packet on your way. Go to the back hallway, turn to your left. Last door on the right, somebody will be there to assist in that. Our last song will be on Jordan Stormy Banks, and then after that, Brother Joe Johnson will lead us in our dismissal prayer. On Jordan's stormy banks I stand and cast a wishful eye to Canaan's fair and happy land, where my possessions lie. We will rest in the fair and happy land by and by, just across on the evergreen shore. Sing the song of Moses and the Lamb by and by, and dwell with Jesus evermore. When shall I reach that happy place and be forever blessed? When shall I see my Father's face and in his bosom rest? We will rest in the fair and happy land by and by, just across on the evergreen shore. Sing the song of Moses and the Lamb by and by, and dwell with Jesus evermore. Filled with delight, my raptured soul would here no longer stay. Though Jordan's waves around me roll, fearless I launch away. We will rest in the fair and happy land by and by, just across on the evergreen shore. Sing the song of Moses and the Lamb by and by, and dwell with Jesus evermore. Joe?
Again, we approach that throne again this afternoon, realizing that our prayer goes through our high priest, Jesus, to you, God. So please listen to us as we talk to you and thank you for this beautiful day we've had, for the opportunity we've had to come to meet with you and the members of your family. Ask you to be with us, each one of us now, as we're about to leave this place. Go with us to our homes, jobs, or whatever the occasion might be. Main thing is when that end comes, help us to be faithful, so when we inherit the home you're going to prepare. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.